But I had a professor, Francis Tremblay, who was a biologist. He was one of the early ecologists, and he was a small farmer and gardener, and he knew what my father was doing, but he didn't quite agree. He agreed, like, with, you know, he should make compost, but then he was in favor, and he was against pesticides.
And potash?
I don't, but all I remember is that he would say to me, well, this organic stuff is okay, you know, but what about this particular chemical point? And I would go home at dinner and say to my father, well, Dr. Tremblay asked me to ask you, Tremblay would ask me, to ask your father this, and he'd sort of arrange a kind of trick question.
And you'd take it home?
I'd take it home, and at dinner I'd give this to my father, and he would figure out a trick answer, you know, and send me back with an answer that he knew would irritate Tremblay. So I was like the intermediary, conduit between these discussions, and it was a very educational process. And
you were learning a lot. Yes,
I was learning a lot. Then in 1949, my father said to me, "Enough is enough. You know, you had a couple years just being a student. Now it's time for you to work. I need you in the business. You can still go to school in the morning, but don't take a full load and then come to work in the afternoon."
Had he completely given up his electrical?
No, he was.
He was still doing that.
Well, he was. He had a. Well, see, actually, Rodale Press was a part of the electrical business for its first 15 years. There was only one company, and Rodale Press was a division of Rodale Manufacturing Company. And both my father and my uncle were partners. In somewhere, I guess it was after I started work, Rodale Press was incorporated. Oh yeah, Rodale Press was incorporated as a separate company, I think about 1947. But then my uncle got half the stock, and my father they were equal partners. But my father, they both made a lot of money during the war because they sold not only a lot of electrical stuff to the Army, but they made machine gun mounts for B-17 bombers too. They had they were making military parts.
And that was all here?
In Emmanus, yeah. And so they each one had, for the first time in their lives, a little bit of money. My uncle invested his, and my father, quote unquote, invested his in book publishing. He started publishing Story Classics, which was a fine limited editions of short stories by famous authors, which lost a lot of money. Basically lost all his money in the publishing. And this so angered my uncle. My father, I was there one time, my father showed my uncle an illustration that he bought for a book by Philip Evergood. He said, I bought 12 of these illustrations and I'm paying $1,000 each for these pictures.
And this is in 1948 or so?
Somewhere in there, 49. So my uncle got so angry about this that he figured, I got to really punish my father, punish my brother.
Even though it was your father's money?
Yeah, well, it was both of theirs, you see.
Oh, okay.
They were both partners, but this was Rodale Press, which was, of course, losing a lot of money then. It took another 10 years after this event before it ever went in the black. But my Uncle Joe, who was a wonderful guy, and he and I got along with him well, to punish his brother, he gave him his half of Rodale Press. He said, Jerry, he said, I'm finished with you. Said, I don't want any part of any company that would...
Was he an older brother?
He was older, but only like a couple of years older.
And that was the way he punished him? He gave it all to him?
He gave him his half of Rodale Press. And my father thought, this is like the worst thing that could happen to me. And because I remember one conversation that a lot of this was discussed in the family, but somewhere about that time my father began to think about estate planning, and he talked to his lawyer, Louis Stamberg. He said, should I start giving my children some of the stock in Rodale Press? And Stamberg's reply was, why would you want to punish them by doing that? what bad things did they ever do to you? That's the kind of enterprise it was.